Item 10B, receive a report and approve First Avenue sidewalk and landscape improvements associated with the Caltrain grade separation project.
Honorable Mayor, Council members, good evening. Yes. This is a oral report. The purpose of the report to provide you with an update and also with some alternative option to choose from in regards to detailed design on the east side of the grade separation project. This is the one. The construction of the grade separation project was started with the assumption that additional 2 tracks will be built on the east side of the project. Reason why all of the design details were finalized on the west side of the projects and not on the east side of the project. After JPB made the final decision to finalize the project with the 2 tracks, having the modification on the design for the high-speed rail. Subsequently, the design on the east side was finalized for the project, and you approved those design details in September of last year and in December of last year. Due to a miscommunication during the construction of those details on the east side of the project, the location of the sidewalk was constructed in a different location versus what was your approval. And that's the reason why the project manager is here to provide you with some alternative for your consideration and decision to make. Rafael Polon from JPB, the project manager, will make the presentation and those recommendations.
Thank you and good evening. So I'm just going to give a very brief update on the sidewalk at First and Pine, and then I've got one decision for the council regarding sidewalk further up on First Avenue. So at First Avenue at Pine, this is the area between Melody Toyota and Pine Street on top of the existing box culvert. It was designed with a 6-foot sidewalk adjacent to the curb. Then there was a planter strip and then the raised planter that you see going in now. However, there was a conflict with the box culvert. Basically, the box culvert is right under where we were intending to build the planter strip, and it just doesn't fit. So what we've had to do is just extend the sidewalk out just in the location, again, from Pine to Melody Toyota with a wider sidewalk, and the street lights move into that raised terraced bed that I mentioned. So it's going to look like this, but with a sidewalk. So instead of just having a 6-foot sidewalk this far and then a planter strip, because we only had 5.5 inches of cover, we couldn't get planting to work. So we're just going to extend the sidewalk all the way out. Lights will still be there, but they'll be set further back in the planter strip. Second and final item is the First Avenue sidewalk, the rest of it. So this is now all the area south of Pine all the way up to the BART facility. So this was what was shown in December 2013. However, as Clara mentioned, the design in the field is a little bit different than that. The current design, we've got anywhere from a 5.5 to a 7.5 foot planter strip going right off the curb. Then you've got a 6-foot wide sidewalk. Then you've got this 2'11", 2'10" smaller planter strip. Then you have the wall and the terrace planting. So I'm going to show you 2 options very quickly and then just ask you to decide which you prefer. Option 1, to keep that planter strip. Option 2, to pave it. This is the sidewalk as it appears today. So this is at Angus, but it actually represents the sidewalk all the way from the Sylvan Underpass to, as I mentioned, Pine Street.
So, I'm
yes.
sorry. Could you slow down just a little bit and
okay.
repeat what you just said? It's from where to where? Okay.
So this sidewalk, this shot represents essentially First Avenue from Pine, which is the cross street just before you hit Melody, and then it runs past, so it runs from Pine to Angus, and then again south of Angus, And right at the Sylvan Underpass, it deviates a little bit from this in that it runs into the underpass. But generally speaking, what you see in that photograph represents what the sidewalk looks like at First Avenue from Pine all the way south. And so just to be specific, this is the planter strip to which I referred, which is 5.5 to 7.5 feet, depending what location you're at. Here's your 6-foot sidewalk, and then this is the smaller planter strip that I was referring to, which is just shy of 3 feet. Then you have this block wall followed by a terraced planting. It obviously hasn't been planted yet, so all you see is hydro seeding, but in the final condition, this whole section will have planting. So this was option 1, which is essentially the leave as is option, and plant this with planting. There's already irrigation in.
Excuse me, Raphael.
Yes.
Could we just stop for a second and make sure the council is clear about what the area Mr. Bowen is referring to?
If I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, I apologize, I haven't been down there for a week. So the last time I was there, the sidewalk was poured from Angus south to the dead end.
Correct.
Okay, and this is not that.
So, I'm sorry, Angus South to the dead end, you mean to the where the BART thing starts over by?
Yes.
Okay, yes, that's correct.
Okay.
There was also some sidewalk on the north side that was in at that time. This is not that, no, this is a sidewalk
Okay.
at Angus and First, essentially.
So last week this wasn't there.
Excuse me, there was nothing poured a week ago. It was, the only thing that I noticed was poured was Angus South.
Angus South, correct.
Yeah.
Correct. This is less than 1 week old, that is correct.
So
you went ahead and
So
started
you went
pouring
ahead
this?
and poured it? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
So, I'm sorry, so what are our choices then?
At this point, the choice would be to either leave it as is or to go with a wider sidewalk and extend the sidewalk 9 feet out to the wall. Exactly. 3 feet, yes.
Go ahead and finish your presentation.
That's pretty much it.
Show the next slide.
This was just a shot of the terracing concept, but basically those are the two options at this point.
Or why don't you restate those options one more time?
Sure. So the current design, we have a 5.5 to 7.5 foot planter, a 6-foot sidewalk, and then a 2-foot 11-inch planter and a terraced block wall with a planter. And just to be clear, everything I'm describing right now is in or is going in shortly. So you have this planter strip here, which is going to be planting. You have the 6-foot sidewalk, and then you have this smaller 2-foot 11 planter strip. And what I am asking is the disposition of this section here. It was my understanding there was a concern regarding there being, quote, too small a planter strip. And so my recommendation, or at least an option, would be that we could extend the width of the sidewalk, and in lieu of having a 6-foot sidewalk adjacent to a relatively narrow planter, would be to just have a wider sidewalk. If that is unappealing, the option would be to keep the 2-foot 11 planter.
And where are the lights? Are they still up on the,
They
on the
are.
slope?
No, I'm sorry, I wasn't clear on that. So the lights, the scene I was showing here with the lights up on the slope, this is only where the box culvert is underneath, because we couldn't put the foundations into the box culvert. So this is only literally at Pine, just before that ramp. It's the section that's got the box culvert. This represents approximately, I believe, 140 feet of linear distance along First Avenue where this condition exists. The rest of First Avenue, we don't have a box culvert, so the lights are at the curb line here. So you can see these lights already in place. So in this scenario, this would be this would be planted, and the lights would be within that planting strip.
Rico?
Chair,
real quick, does this delay anything by going to the second option, one? Two, is there any additional costs? And if the answer is yes, then who pays?
So delay-wise, no, it's not going to delay us because we can do this as a separate pour. Will there be additional costs? Yes, clearly there will be additional costs. Who's going to pay for it? The JPB is going to pay for it. The misunderstanding that Clara was referring to is a large proportion of is my fault. So we're going to try to make it good, and JPB will pay for whichever option, either the planting, if that's what the council wants, or we'll pour the concrete at our expense.
I appreciate your concise answers, and I appreciate you standing there and taking ownership. So I respect that. I think what always challenges me at times is that we're being asked things when in essence it's almost done. That when I go back to the fountain, which I totally was in support, that it was, do you want it or not, but the pipes are in the ground. So we have it almost done, and now we're being asked as it's been poured, and the irrigation is there, whether we want to proceed. So I appreciate your answers, and I appreciate you coming forward and explaining the miscommunication.
So where's the irrigation now?
There is irrigation in this planting strip. There's irrigation in the terrace, but the irrigation I referred to as already being in is under this small strip as well. So in either event, you'd still use this irrigation, you'd still use the irrigation on the terracing. The one that's in doubt is this right here. If you want it sidewalk, it's PVC, we'll simply bury it. No harm, no foul. If you want to use it, it's there. We'll hook it up to the existing system. There's a controller at first by the station, and we would just tie it into that. So it's been designed to accommodate that. It's not a lot of massive amount of water, so it's not going to change the system one way or another. We would just lose the PVC.
Through Chair.
Ken?
I don't have a problem with 3 feet of planting, and I actually don't mind when we learned of this, and I went out and measured it. It's 3 feet of landscaping. It's a 6-foot sidewalk, and in many cases, what I measured was about 8 feet from the sidewalk to the curb.
Correct.
So, like you said, 7.5 feet of planting. My concern is that there's going to be cars parked along that curb, and so any planting that's there is going to get trampled, and it's also going to gather litter. I prefer to see, if we're going to add more sidewalk, I prefer to see more flat work for passengers getting out of the car. Still, people are going to cut across, and there's going to be some trampling of cutting, because it's 8 feet from the curb, they're going to cut through, and I'd love to see some, little pathways here and there, just some stepping stones or whatever, just so that people don't walk through the plants to get to the sidewalk. Because we're not talking intersections here, we're talking a straight sidewalk from Angus almost all the way to the train station. There's no breaks. So anyone wanting to get on that sidewalk is going to cut through planting. And so I'm in favor of adding more paving, but within that strip between what you've already poured and the curb.
The larger one.
Yeah, the larger one.
So not that it would 100% mitigate what you just said, because I don't disagree with you. Anytime you have planting, not everybody respects it. We could potentially mitigate that by putting, like you said, some kind of either paving stones or pouring some concrete out to allow, you're not going to stop everybody, but at least if it's a choice of walking a block or cutting across the planting, I can understand that. If it's a case of walking an extra 10 feet, most people will do the right thing. That's
they're going to find their way. Yeah, you're going to see the little paths over time.
So that's a thing we could do if that's of interest.
Let me just clarify that. So, Ken, you're saying to put some horizontal pieces there.
I'd like to see. We have an existing 6-foot sidewalk, and there's an existing 3-foot planting strip between the sidewalk and the wall. Quite possibly look at another 3-foot planting strip on the other side of of the existing sidewalk and then have about 3 feet of paving for, you know, next to the curb or up to the curb. So that those light poles would be in paving
Right.
in the sidewalk.
So there would be 3 feet,
Yeah, so
Right
cut
there,
that,
and then
cut
you'd
that
have
in
a
half,
planted-
yeah.
understood. That's an option as well. I mean, what I was suggesting is you could put individual, doesn't show up real well with the laser pointer, but you know what I'm talking about, individual access points.
Yeah.
Just
No,
to minimize
anything
that.
to break up would be fine, but I don't
Right.
think we need 12 feet of sidewalk. Or even, you know, 9 feet, or even
Right.
15 feet of sidewalk.
Right. So that, I mean, that is absolutely doable if that's something that the council would prefer to what I just laid out.
No, I agree with that. You're going to have people stepping all over that landscaping if you just give them one option to either go into the street or go into the plants, so,
Makes sense.
right. Irene?
Can I ask staff, have they considered what the pros and cons are for having the smaller strip next to the terrace planter and this current sidewalk? So it's a 2 point, could you go back one?
Yeah, sorry. 3 feet,
Thank you.
basically.
So 3 feet of planter strip. How, I mean, do we have a plan of what we're going to put there, how we're going to maintain it, how we're going to keep people from, you know, going up and trying to climb up the planter strip, I mean, the terrace part, how you're gonna, it just, anyway, those are my questions.
Council member, that's how was the original design. The original Eastside design was this smaller planter strip, then the sidewalk, then the wider planter strip. That was reviewed extensively by Park and Recreation for design and maintenance purposes, and they felt comfortable with maintaining those landscape area.
Okay.
Later on, this was the design presented for your consideration in September of last year, and then later on, you requested changing the design, and that's when was moved the sidewalk closer to the curb with the recommendation to install the sidewalk at the curb and to create a larger landscape area, which that was your decision at that time.
Okay. Thank you.
Just, I would offer, Councilmember Ibarra, that with another possible alternative would be, instead of creating a horizontal additional 3 feet of paving along the curb, maybe to create some vertical design, the connection between the sidewalk and the curb. And that's just another possibility.
Vertical or horizontal?
Vertical, you said horizontal and.
Perpendicular to the sidewalk.
Perpendicular,
Yeah,
perpendicular.
the only issue is you don't know where people are going to get out of their cars. And if it's going to line up. So.
You would assume that most of the people will basically park, yes, in the right direction.
You would
and
assume.
I would assume, yes, you are absolutely correct.
So staff's recommendation would be, rather than the horizontal, having more strips of pavement, to either install pavers at relatively frequent intervals or perpendicular pieces of poured concrete to create the same opportunity to avoid stepping in the plants.
And I think the rhythm of the light standards, that's probably where you might want to increase the paving, since you've taken away the ability to walk around them. Yeah.
You are correct.
Yeah.
That would be part of the consideration. I think it's a great idea.
So option 3, as I hear it, would be to do additional flat work at this interval perpendicular to the sidewalk. I thought you're not going to necessarily stop everybody, but at least you've provided mid-block alternatives to walking all the way up to Angus.
Yeah, and And I would say, you know, pay some attention to how you've laid out that parking.
Right.
Obviously, I mean, unless we're actually going to, you know, stripe parking spaces, you know, then you can strategically place that, you know, the pavement. But for the purposes of you counting parking spaces, you've already laid out some,
Correct.
you know, parking, so,
Yep.
you know,
So you'll have a pretty good idea where that should be.
yeah.
Okay. Questions or comments, or? Okay, why don't you tell us what we're going to approve right now?
So what I just heard, just so I'm clear, is the option 3 you don't see in front of you, which is to keep the 2'11", the paving, I mean the not paving, the planter, and then to add elements perpendicular to that 6-foot sidewalk, taking into account the logical spacing of a car, and as well the spacing of the poles that are there for lighting, and essentially provide intermittent perpendicular elements to allow them to cross. No? Okay.
I had made a proposal that we continue a sidewalk along the curb of 3 feet,
Okay.
of paving of 3 feet. If we're not in favor of that, I still have an issue with wherever cars are and where that paving isn't, that landscaping's, you know, shot.
Okay.
So, I'm not married to anything, so, I mean, I think as long as we provide some flat work connection between the curb, the street, and the 6-foot sidewalk, I'm fine with it, so. Go on with your option 3.
So you're suggesting, just so we get it straight, that maybe there be let's just say a 2-foot section parallel to the sidewalk that's there, but adjacent to the curb, and then have some perpendicular
Let me
elements.
just say it
so
right
they
now,
go
I
along.
hate being the passenger getting out of the car and stepping right into a planting strip.
Right, exactly.
And that's what I do, you know, that's what you do in some of the older neighborhoods. You know, and that's why some of the older neighborhoods that have planting strips, they're not planting strips anymore. They're, you know, they're paved in. So I think intermittently, I mean, we should have paving, and then, you know, then you can, you know, have a relief of, you know, landscaping between that, you know, that narrow paving and the large sidewalk.
I agree. Okay, Irene?
Okay.
I would agree if I knew what you were all saying. Okay, so you have the curb, and you're saying to put 3 feet of, an additional 3 feet of sidewalk, and then have a narrow strip of planter with intermittent sidewalk to connect the.
Some paving, maybe
Paving, pavers, something.
maybe a 6x6 area that's where the poles in the middle of it.
What
The
I
light poles
heard,
in the middle.
what I heard, you considered to have a 2 feet additional paved adjacent to the curb, then you will have a little bit over than 3 feet planter strip between that additional paving and the existing sidewalk, then the second planter strip, and to have some perpendicular paver connecting that additional paved parallel wider curb with the sidewalk.
Are you agreeing with that? Because that's a lot
Yeah.
more side. Okay.
If that's what,
He already offered to pay, don't question
No.
his choice.
I have to say something. I truly do not remember getting into this kind of detail in September when approving these things. Not at this scale. So I appreciate the fact that we had some plans and that we looked at things and we went through things. But to say that we approve this, I think is a little misleading to the public, because we didn't. I know I didn't, or I didn't intend to. If I did, I apologize. But just the conversation we've had here and your own experience, and people out here, I can see their faces when we talk about it. Nobody likes to step out of a car into a plant. I mean, even if they don't intentionally step on a plant, you know, eventually somebody's going to step on a plant. So I just want to say that, because I appreciate your problems. I know you had, you know, we had stacks of documents like this with so much drawings and changes and all those other things. But the next town you go to, could you do this kind of thing before you pour the concrete and ask them ahead of time? So I think your life would be a lot easier. That's all. Thank you.
Ken?
I'll make a motion that we move forward with option 3 with, I believe, at least 2 feet of paving from the curb, and then intermittent paving connecting that 2 feet with the main side, with the 6-foot sidewalk.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. On the question? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Are we all understood?
Yes.